Thanks, Joe, and really nice to see you all again for another year. It's fantastic to be here. Thank you, Joe. Thank you, Alison, particularly for your welcome here. This is an institution very dear to my heart. I didn't study here, but I work with a lot of colleagues from here and have done over the years. I'm going to talk us through. Oh, there we go. That's me in full swing, as they say. From me, a welcome to London and a welcome to IAFOR. I am going to talk a little bit about why I'm still working with IAFOR and why I care about it, really, but also how we can engage you in some of those conversations. And it's really building on what Joe and Alison have said. And I'm going to just problematize that a little bit. We've talked and touched on it, but our aim is intercultural, international, and interdisciplinary, and it is about conversation. And those are things that are easy until they're not, until we're not international anymore because our borders or feel under threat, or people feel under threat, and suddenly that mood changes. And we've seen that over our last government. And it's not about one side being right or wrong. It's about a sense of insecurity on both sides. There aren't rights or wrongs in this. And I think IAFOR is one of those places where you can have those conversations. And that matters, but it's hard. And I think we have to learn skills that allow us to do that. And that's what academic life and academic forums are about. International is similar. Intercultural, international are both difficult, problematic terms, and they look very different from wherever you sit. And I have worked in many parts of the world and had to really rethink how and what those perspectives look like. And interdisciplinary, likewise. We often, as I say, all those things are easy to say. We often say them and they run off the tongue and they sit through all our IAFOR kind of brochures. And we can think, yeah, that sounds really good until we have to do it. Interdisciplinarity is exactly the same. It's even harder if it's intercultural. It's even harder when you speak different languages and you have to listen harder. You have to be more patient. You have to be more generous. And you have to work at it. And it's so easy to say it, except when you have to do it. And this is as much about doing it. And I know we make light of the 5 minutes, the stop, and the please don't have other conversations in the room. But it happens. It happens all the time. And it does undermine the very things we say. So we do mean it. And we do want to be better at it. So I think it's really important to think about that because we all take often the paths of least resistance, whether in nature or indeed every time there's a barrier, we find another way around it. But we also find another way to avoid sometimes facing the things that are actually hardest. So this is a challenge for us. When we've talked about this, and we've talked about this in IAFOR for a long time, and I chair the International Academic Board, we still skip over some of these things quite easily without thinking, actually, this is hard. There are different sets of skills, international, interdisciplinary, and intercultural, all require us to find different skills. And when we're still learning, for many of you, you'll be PhD students learning the groundwork of research. It's hard enough to find the methods and methodology to construct your PhD, never mind thinking about all of those things as well. But all of those things matter, and they matter for all of you as you sit in this room and in these in the sessions over the next few days. So wherever we are, and Joe mentioned this earlier, today it's in London, and one of our IAFOR's extraordinary experiences is to move around the world and to hear, quite often, interdisciplinary, intercultural, and international from those different perspectives. And the richness of working like this is that we, in a sense, travel in a caravan together and kind of understand what it is to be in a place and to understand what that place means, to share ideas, yes, to meet new colleagues, to make new friends, it's all been said, and to engage in conversations. But those conversations can not only be with the people that speak your language. And that's why we start this conference and many others with those words and the kind of activities that you've done. But I think it's something we have to persist with over a much longer period. And when I was just putting this together, we've been thinking very hard since COVID. In effect, what IAFOR became during COVID was a means to broadcast, but also to keep everybody talking. And the minute we couldn't travel, we realized that we'd lost quite a lot of that sort of sense of the room, of how you talk and engage with one another, how you have those kind of passing conversations over a coffee or a sandwich. Those things had kind of got lost. And it's going to be a long reset. As Jo mentioned, I chair a number of research exercises and similar things. We had to do the same thing in COVID. We had to manage ourselves looking at the nation's research. And that was equally hard. And we realized that how much we lost in the little conversations we had. And one of the big things, and I was trained as an architect, but it's more than that. It's actually a kind of sense of how we work in public, in place. And whether it's London or Barcelona or it's Kobe or Nagoya or Tokyo, there is a crisis of real estate in the sense that we don't know quite what to do with it or how to use it. I walk around the university I'm in at the moment, in Middlesex, and it's too empty. And it's really nice to see human beings in a room. I know it gets hot, I know it can be uncomfortable, it takes time to get here, all of those sorts of things. But actually offices are struggling. We have empty buildings everywhere. And our public buildings are equally empty at certain times. And we kind of think about a conference perhaps in a slightly different way. Conferences used to be, and we've managed this, and we still have the same kind of conference format. But for me, I think one of the things to think about is, what is a conference for? And yes, it's always been for dialogue, but it's also because we still have cultures like publish or perish. Not a good culture, necessarily. Publishing alone is not enough. It's the process by which we get there, really the important conversations. And that's not to say publishing doesn't matter, but how we do those things, how we get there, how some of you might publish beyond your PhDs, or as you become developed scholars. I think the conference is much, much more important than it's probably ever been, but it's also a different kind of space. We often don't talk to the people along the corridor from us. We often meet them at conferences, strangely. One of the things that happens to me as a senior colleague is that I get all the requests for conferences to pay the bill. And I find that 4 people are going to the same conference and they didn't even know. And they sit in offices next to each other, or supposedly sit in offices next to each other. And this happens time and again. And you suddenly encounter people that you didn't know. Even me, looking down the list today, realized that I knew several people that were speaking today that I didn't know were coming. And I think it's really important to think about, what is a conference for, what is its purpose, and what might it be? And that's where all of you come in that sense. So I just want to think about that. And we talk quite often, again, rather glibly, about what it is to form a community of practice. Community of practice comes from domain or domains and how they come together. It comes from being a community and being able to be a community through conferences, through attending, through membership, perhaps, of communities. And it comes through the practices that we operate under, or the practice we operate. And one of the things I think that is changing is those practices, how and where we meet people, rather than just it being transactional, which a lot of us experienced during COVID. How do we have those glancing conversations, or that we start a conversation that becomes a social event or a social structure? It is about sharing and discussing ideas. It's also learning to disagree well, because it's very, very easy to be a community if you all agree. And I'm always reminded of that, particularly as a senior academic employing people, that it's very easy to employ people that look like you and are like you. But actually, it's the worst for decision making. And quite often we don't see those things coming. We create bubbles which are fantastic until they burst. And they burst quite suddenly. And you see it all over the world. We've kind of seen it through our politics. We've got a new government. It's starting again. The rhetoric is different, but we've seen little bubbles, big bubbles in that case, but burst. And actually some very difficult sense of language. So disagreeing well, disagreeing respectfully is really vital. And I hope that as part of that long reset, we can also learn a lot in that doing. So we do need to do some rethinking. And we in IAFOR have been doing some of that rethinking. We did a survey with our current members. We've done a lot of research, and colleagues in IAFOR have been doing a lot of research as to how other people are thinking about this. And we also want to hear from you. So we're looking for ideas, I guess, but we do want to learn. We want to learn how you feel we could do conferences maybe differently. How can we strengthen those communities, strengthen those bonds that have perhaps broken down in institutions, not only for those institutions, but so that we build a broader international community? And how can we sustain that momentum? How can we curate this conference or any other conference that we do as we move those ideas around the world? And how do we make best value of all of that for all of you? Because it's all of you coming together that we facilitate in that context. And by definition, research is never done in isolation. You may be lone scholars, but you're not isolated scholars. That's why you're here. And I think we have to really think very hard about how we build those networks across the world that are possibly not in our own countries or in our own institutions or even in the institutions next door. So I think it's really important to think through some of those. And we are doing that rethinking, but we need to do it with you as part of that. We have conferences. So what models of conferences can we have? And what models of conferences might we have? We've seen the unconference model. We've seen the walk-in conference model. So there are other things emerging. But how, in an international, interdisciplinary, intercultural forum, can we do that? And that's just a page from our conference proposition. We have the journals. Is this the best way for us to pursue publishing? Is it the only way? These are fantastic opportunities. Conference proceedings are fantastic opportunities. But as we develop media, social media, connections, is this the only or the best way to do it? Or can we think of other ways of doing it? And IAFOR has been working through this and through recognizing those so that they become part of course, the publish and perish culture. But actually, we all understand the models. We all understand the models that help everybody progress. But I don't think they're enough anymore. And I think IAFOR has been thinking that through quite a lot. And And I think it needs to be all of you that help out all of us try and find new ways of doing some of those things. So yes, journals, but what else can we do that augments that or supports that and raises the bar on all of those conversations? So this is where we got to with a series of themes. And we just put those, I've just put these up. We're actually discussing them on Saturday as a kind of, as themes that came out of both our research and of what people told us online in our survey. Those are kind of 4 ideas, and they're changing themes. We hope we can evolve them as we take them around the world as part of that caravan. But they will start to shape our keynotes, they will start to shape our panels, and they will start to shape our debates. But you need to tell us what those things might be and where you want or how you want those to roll forward and to be shaped. And they're just a way of giving us new lenses and to catch, if you like, the emerging ideas from different perspectives. So just to end, really, the other thing that we've been thinking about is there's many of you here from, as we say, 80 countries. We all need to learn things, and we all need to learn things about intercultural, interdisciplinary, and international. Can we do something in the conference to enhance that value? Can we think about different kinds of work that we might do? We have poster events, but could we make better posters? Could we talk about public speaking? Could we talk about modes of publishing, opportunities for publishing, new ways of publishing? It's in terms of open research, there is a real move globally to actually open up the publishing space in positive ways. How do we talk about research integrity, and what does that mean? What does that mean around the world, and how do we think about it? How do we undertake something I've spent probably 25, 30 years of my academic career talking about, which is how to work practically through creative and practice research. How can we help other people build that understanding and knowledge, and how do we help people make an impact with their research? How do we take that research into the world? All of those things are important. And so that's for me, one of the best posters that was ever produced about peace. And we're going to be talking about some of those things later. It's a poster by Robert Brownjohn, but it says very little. It says a lot with very little. And I think it's those sorts of questions or opportunities and experience that we want to bring to IAFOR and to those conferences. So just in finishing, we can think again, but it means that we think again, not IAFOR alone thinks again. We might think differently, and I'd like to welcome and encourage all of you to tell us how we might do that in that sense, but we need you to do it. I'm going to leave you with a few things that have been said in different ways. Be patient, listen well, and it's hard sometimes. Be generous, intellectually generous, be kind, be open, show up and share. And the show up is really vital. I know you're in London. I know there's some fantastic shopping. I know the football's on. I know there's loads of things, and the sky is blue and the sun is shining. But because of the way conferences are programmed, sometimes when you've done your presentation, you think, okay, now I can go. So the last few presentations of the day are often a little more empty. Think about what it would be like if it was you in those presentations. So the showing up is really vital. I would encourage you to do that. We might think of new ways of managing that, but I think it's so important for all of you to both be generous and to give back in the same way that other people do that for you. So I hope that leaves you with a few things to think about. Really, I hope you enjoy it. welcome, as I say, welcome to London from my perspective. Please come and talk to me, talk to any of us about what it is we might do together, and how we might shape the future of the conference, but also future relationships internationally, interculturally, and in interdisciplinary ways. So thank you very much for listening, and I'll see you in the conference.